so we're live. We're live already, Fiona, so that's
okay.
Brilliant. Hello, everyone. So we'll give it another couple of minutes for people to join. Great, we've got 8 attendees already, but we did have a good number subscribed today. So we'll give it another couple of minutes before I introduce Fiona.
Well, I hope the people that hope the people that are watching have got notebooks on hand, because I'm a bit like a machine gun. It's like bang, 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 bang. So and don't be afraid to put questions in the chat so that we can talk about specific things.
Wonderful. I think we'll start, Fiona. So we've got 9 attendees. We had a huge number subscribed today, so I'm guessing that people are just joining us and when they can. But thank you for joining us for our eScalate webinar. It's the last one before Christmas, so we've done 5 already. And Fiona Scott of Scott Media has very kindly joined me today to deliver this session on PR. We're based in Wiltshire, so my company, the Export Department, is based in Swindon, and we all know Fiona. She comes incredibly highly recommended, and we see you everywhere, Fiona. So there's so many people I know that enlist your services, so hence why you're on the call with me today. But I think at this point I'll just pass over to you, and you can do a little bit of introduction, and I'll go a bit quiet, but I'll be monitoring the Q&A and everything as we go throughout.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a bit weird I can't see you, so I'm going to trust you can all see and hear me, but feel free to say yes in the chat, because that gives me confidence that that you're listening. Yeah, I realise I am quite well known in Swindon and Wiltshire, probably because I'm old and I've been here for ages. I've been a journalist for 32 years, started in 1988 in the traineeship, and I've had a long career in newspapers and television, and volunteered in radio, and today I'm also an ambassador for Swindon Community Radio. I am in an industry, folks, where there's a lot. I'm also quite straight talking, so if I offend anyone, I'm really sorry. I try not to, but it's just who I am. There's a lot of BS in my industry, and that works both sides. It works from the PR side, but it also works from the business owner side of what business owners think the press can and can't do for them. And also at this time of the year, I don't know how you're feeling, folks, but we could all do with a bit of a laugh. We could all do with a bit of a smile. And with that in mind, I've had a little video done, which I hope will make you smile, but also will illustrate some of the points that I'm going to make later. So my trusty friend Alison is going to be sorting out, is going to be sorting out the video. So can we play the video, please?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I don't think anyone could hear the sound on that, Andrea.
Yes, I've just seen the comments there. I'm not quite sure what's happened because I can hear it. So I apologise for that. The only thing I can do is send it out, Fiona, or it'll be part of this recording.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Don't know why that's happened, to be honest, because I can hear it perfectly this side.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it either. Well, folks, we can send it out. Can I please ask you not to share it anywhere, though, please?
Or we can delay it until it's published, Fiona.
Yeah, it's going to be published
easier.
on December the 1st. So after that, if you want to share it, feel free. But could we just hang on till then? So we'll crack on, folks, if that's okay with everybody. Right, okay, the first thing to say about PR is, do you really understand what it is? Now, a lot of people will say to me, it's press relations, it's relationship with the press, and it's not that. It's public relations. So it's relationships with all of your publics, and every business owner will have a different set of audiences, if you like, to whom they should be speaking. So that might be, you might be a B2C business, so that'll be consumers, general public. You might be a B2B business, so that'll be other business owners, other businesses, or even a mixture of the two. Or it could be stakeholders in your business, shareholders, staff. It could be, you might have another different type of audience, say if you're a charity or a not-for-profit. So one of the key things to do is understand who your audience is and who you're trying to get your messages to. And you need to get the messages to them consistently, often, and in a layered manner. I'll talk more about that specifically. So understand what public relations is, and if you are unsure, look at somewhere like the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. They have an actual definition for it. It's a bit wordy, but it gets it across to you, the fact that public relations may not be what you think it is. And one key thing here, public relations is not sales. And this is a common misconception. So if you think that, you know, you're going to get a story out there and £5,000 is going to knock on your door and walk in, that is not how it works. I think that has happened once in the 12 years I've run my business. So PR is not sales. Sales is a different but an aligned skill. And you have to have that skill, or have someone within your business that has that skill. And then the two things come together, okay? So that's the first thing to say, understand what PR is. And now I am a journalist, so I specialise in the bit of PR that involves the media. But a good PR consultant or a good business owner that does their own PR will have an eye on other things, because you cannot just do that in this day and age. So if you've got media as part of your PR strategy, you'll probably have other things. And these things will include website, social media activity, could be signage on clothing, signage on vans, signage on office. It could be podcast, video. There's just a whole multitude of things that count as marketing. It could be trade shows you attend virtually at the moment, but in the real world. All of these things work better if you plan for them and if you see how they fit together, and then if you sell off the back of that opportunity. So I'm hoping that makes sense to you. So that's what PR is. I specialise in the media bit. Some of you will be interested in that and some won't. I mean, hopefully if you come on today, that's one bit you are interested in. So the other thing to talk about is, why is the media useful to you? Because people often get happy ears around a journalist without thinking about why someone is useful to you. So the reason is this: I, as a journalist, represent an audience that you can't get to. And it doesn't matter whether you think I'm the biggest prat in the world, because for that moment, I represent that audience that you cannot get to. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. That's why journalists have value. And obviously, the bigger and the more targeted that audience, the more opportunity that creates for you. So that's what I mean by the value of journalists. There are downsides to that, of course, but that's almost a conversation for another day, unless one of you has a specific question around that, which I can answer. But overall, journalists are very powerful super connectors. They're great contacts. and they are great contacts in business. And business owners forget this. They try and treat journalists like me like we're something other, a different breed, when in actual fact, we're generally business owners like you, freelancers often, and you should treat us exactly the same as any other business contact. Bearing in mind who we know, because we generally are going to know a lot more people than you do, or a lot more people than your other contacts in business, simply because of the nature of what we do, which is all about audience and people. Okay, right, I'm now going to move on to 5 things journalists hate. So I am going to make an assumption here. Now, all of you who are listening are at least interested in speaking to a journalist. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the things that won't work, because hopefully then what I'll do is I'll open your new sense a little and make you start thinking about being a journalist for your business or your organisation. Okay, so journalists are not interested in products or services. So if you want to talk about your product or your service and how great it is, buy advertising space, because for a journalist, that's advertising all day long. Okay, you have to bear that in mind. So I don't know, if you're a heating and plumbing company and you sell Worcester boilers and you want to talk about the 20 great things that that Worcester boiler does, well, think to yourself this: are people going to be interested in that? Would I read that? Or would I watch that? Unless I was at this moment in time wanting to buy a boiler. Okay. And then you have to think, well, yes, I definitely want to talk about the 20 fine points of my boiler. Buy space. Because that is not a story for the media. And that's what you have to remember. The media are looking for stories, okay? And your products and services aren't a story. They're not there to advertise your business. They're there for a different purpose. And you have to bear that in mind. The only time that your products or services work is if they are doing a feature on that type of product or that type of service. And believe me, that's going to come up very, very rarely, and not enough for media stories to have an impact on your business. So you jump on it if it came up. So I want you to think about that. Products or services, no. Okay. They're not interested in mission statements, vague, wishy-washy mission statements. And what I mean by that, folks, is I'm sure that some of this will resonate with you. When you go to a networking event, online or offline, and you meet someone and you say to them, what do you do? Or they stand up and do their 40 or 60 seconds, and at the end of it, you still have no idea what they do, because they've talked in vague, wishy-washy flim-flam. And I found this particularly with women, I have to say, some men, where they talk about features and benefits, but at the end of it, you think, but what do you do? And it might sound like this: my role is to empower and enrich the lives of women. And then they go on for another 30 seconds about that. And then you think at the end, what do you do? Journalists don't have time to work out what you do. They need to know. So a journalist like me, if I hear that, what I'll say to someone is, what do you do? And that video, which you'll get later, speaks to that. Okay, so it speaks to that mission statement of BS, where at the end of it, you think, well, what do you actually do? And the thing is, when you do that to a journalist, they're going to move on really quickly. So if you sell skincare products, regardless of whether you want to enrich or empower women, you sell skincare products. You are an accountant, you are an engineer, you are a PR consultant. Say what you are really clearly. Mission statements don't work with journalists. In fact, they hardly work with anybody, to be honest. Because how can people sell for you or recommend you when they don't understand what you do? And what happens in networking situations is people go blank, their eyes glaze over, or they get slightly embarrassed and they move on. And they won't recommend you because they don't understand what you do. And so they don't want to recommend you incorrectly. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. When you're dealing with journalists, don't be deluded. So the next one is delusion. What do I mean by that? I'm not meaning to be rude, but have you ever met the business person, okay, who thinks their story is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they ram it down your throat all the time, over and over? When you see them, you know exactly what they're going to say, and you kind of think, oh, okay. Have you ever met anyone like that? Because I'm betting if you're out in the business community, you have. And often this will be expressed in this way. People will say, I've got a really exciting new product, and you just know it's not exciting. And don't be deluded, be realistic about where your story fits, okay? What's exciting to you and to your team may not be exciting to a wider audience. Don't be deluded, have some realism. And I always say to my clients, it's about being humble and sharing information. It's not about saying my products is the best thing in the world. Believe me, if it's not the first, the last, the worst, and you can prove that, it's not you just saying it, just spouting words, you know, don't be deluded. However, there's a flip side to that, and one that I see almost as commonly, and I particularly see it in the legal and the financial sectors, where people say, oh, my business is really dull. There are no stories in my business. You know, I'm a necessary evil in business, or I'm a dull but worthy. Okay. Now, everybody has a story to tell in business. It's just a question of waking your new sense, waking up your mind to the possibility of it, and planning for it, folks. And the reason there are stories in business is because businesses involve people, and people have stories. Okay, once you get your head around that, the stories will start to pop up and you'll be less fixated. I had a conversation with someone only yesterday in the financial sector, and it went like this. This is a way of showing you, right, okay, I want to engage with the media, Fiona. Excellent, great, that's really good. Okay, however, I need to ensure that every story that goes out to the media is compliant. That's absolutely fine. You'll get to check it. And if the company you work with is an IFA, needs to check it too, that's absolutely fine. It'll go out. Okay. No, I need to check it. I need to see it before it goes into the paper. They need to send me a draft of it before it appears in the publication. No. No. If you're not paying for space, you don't have that right in law to see it. It doesn't matter whether you're in an industry where compliance is a thing. You have no rights. That would be like me coming up to you, any of you, and saying, okay, I want to put a blog about me on your website, please. I don't want to pay for that privilege, but when you've done the landing page, send it to me, please, so I can approve it. Can you see how that feels? So you have to be realistic and don't be deluded about your story. You might think you've got the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you probably haven't. Equally, you might think, I've got no stories to tell. This is really fearful. There's always stories to tell. I think probably in 13 years, there's only one company where I have said to them, I can't tell your stories. And even they didn't know that I couldn't. And the reason was that they worked in the security sector and that the government was their main client. And I knew that if we tried to do PR, something called a D notice would be slapped on us. So a D notice is very common in the media, and it's where the government can put basically a gagging order on the media based upon national security issues. And a D notice is very rarely challenged in court. And that's the only circumstance in which I've ever said to someone, I can't PR your business. Okay, so I hope that helps. Right, next thing, poor research. Okay, and the reason I bring this up is many PR companies will say to small business owners, we can get your story in front of 400 journalists. And that can really sound compelling, can't it? But 395 of them are not going to be interested. And what you end up doing is spamming them. And what that PR company is not telling you is that what they're actually doing is sending out that news release through a database. And so it splurges your story all over the place. Now that's easy for the PR company, it saves them time. But the truth is, for the journalists receiving that, they feel exactly the same as you do when you get loads of spam where you know it's gone to multiple people. Okay, They know that, they're not fools. And that might work for that first story, but the next time that pops into their inbox, they're going to delete it without even reading what the story is. So, you know, spamming to 400 journalists who are not interested hardly ever works. Be targeted, okay? And that means do a little bit of research around where you'd like your story to appear. Okay, and notice my words, where you would like your story to appear, not where you demand your story to appear. If you want to demand, you buy space, okay? So for every one of you, that's going to be different. So it might be and should be your local media, because you're a local business based in Oxfordshire, and your local media is going to be generally the most important media for you. Okay, and it's the most important media for you because the majority of your clients will come from a certain area. So if you're not sure where you need to target your efforts, look at where your clients are coming from. You might want to be in a niche or trade press because you want to be seen as a thought leader amongst your peers, or you might want to be in the trade press because a market you're after is construction. You know, you need to build your media list around your business goals. And I often say to people, have a wish list. Somewhere where you'd really like to appear. It doesn't have to be logical even. I want to appear on This Morning, or I'd really like to appear in Mail Online. And for those of you who are thinking, I'd never want to be in the Daily Mail, really? Because it's the biggest and its audience is the biggest. And actually it's taken to court the least. Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, our perception of how the national press works is very odd. Female particularly is particularly influential and important, and a very big audience. So you can build your own media list, and it's much better to do that, folks. Okay, rather than to try and be all things to everyone, have a scattergun approach. And if a PR company isn't explaining their process to you, move on, because actually they could damage your reputation. They really could if they do it in this way. So poor research into who wants what. And I'll give you some really basic, you know, horse and hounds do not want to talk about cats and rabbits. If a journalist is writing about green handbags, they're not interested in your orange or gold handbag. Okay, so I'm trying to put it into context for you. So you can start to think about, where do I want to appear? What are my business goals? You know, if, for example, a good connection for you is an HR manager in a business, it might be HR Magazine or HR Today. None of this is rocket science. You can do this research yourself as long as you have a bit of a strategy around it. So don't do poor research. And then the next one's the big one in dealing with the media. Okay, they don't care about how busy you are. They don't care about your diary. Okay, if the media engages with you, you need to move and dance to their tune, because you aren't paying for space. And even if you are, you're still going to have to dance to their tune, because they've still got to get that publication out. So they still need to get approval of whatever it is you've paid for in that time. So any of you who've ever taken display ad space or advertorial space will know this. And if you don't check it over and it goes out and there's a mistake and you've paid and you haven't checked it over, the fault is yours, not the publication. If they've put it out and you've paid for space and they haven't allowed you to check it over, that opportunity hasn't been there, then the fault is theirs. And you go back and you have a gentle conversation about that, and they'll give you a freebie next time. Okay, nice little PR tip there. But in terms of meeting journalist deadlines, really important. So if a journalist calls you after saying yes or no, and I'll talk more about that later, to the journalist, ask what their deadline is. And their deadline, if it was radio, could be 30 minutes, but it could be 3 or 4 days. Set your deadline in front of that and know that you're going to meet it, and meet it. Because if you meet it, they're going to come back. If you don't, they'll forget you and they'll move on. And the reason I add this into my 5 things journalists hate is I attended an event in London 4 or 5 years ago. It sadly doesn't happen now, but it was a panel of about 6 different journalists. And I went with clients. I'm unusual in that I take clients with me, but I've got a whole reason for doing that. But anyway, I was there with clients, and about 40% of the room was PR people like me. And then there were a lot of London-based small businesses there because it was in London. And their biggest whinge was, oh, I've tried to contact you. And you phoned me back and I just couldn't take your call then. Why didn't you phone me back? It was that kind of whinge. Well, let me explain why they don't phone you back. As a local journalist here in Wiltshire, where I write regularly for 2 publications and an ad hoc way for 3, I get about 400 emails a day. Okay, 400 emails a day. I want you to think about that. So I have to prioritize what I do alongside my business. So if you take a journalist for a regional publication or a big city publication or a national publication, they get thousands of emails. They haven't got time to get back to people who can't see them in the moment because the news agenda moves too quickly for that. So that's why they're not being funny. It's not that they're being funny about you. It's not that they think, you know, oh, they're no good. It's not any of that. It's they are too busy to even respond. And think of the days when you're really, really busy yourself. And I can think of many days like this, where even responding to an email to say, yes, got it, thanks, is an encumbrance on your time because you are so busy and you are so overwhelmed. Journalists lived at that adrenaline-fueled pitch all the time. And also, when I used to work on the Swindon Advertiser back in the early 1990s, we had 20 journalists covering the whole of Swindon. And Swindon then had a population of about 160,000. Now it's closer to 200,000 and we have 5 journalists. I want you to think about how busy they are. And that is replicated all over the country. And with the national press, it's replicated because most journalists are freelance. So they get paid a commissioned rate per article. The longer that article takes, the more that eats into their money, if that makes sense. So by you understanding a bit of how the media works in the UK, you start to understand why it's really important to get back to them if they are important to you. So I hope that makes sense to you. So just to recap, journalists are not interested in your products and services. And if that's all you want to talk about, you need to go down the route of advertising, social media, blogging your stuff, okay? Mission statements where you're not clear about what you do. Now they're going to move on. They are not going to spend the time trying to work out what you do. Delusion about how great your story is or how rubbish it is. Everyone has a story, just a question of finding it. And actually, you need to think stories, not story. It's about consistently telling stories, not telling a story once and thinking it's going to solve all your sales problems because you're on a hide into nothing there. You really are. Poor research. Trying to be all things to everybody, using a company that splurges your news out across a database will not work in the long run. And diary, how busy you are. If you're going to do this thing, you need to make it a priority. Even if you're working with someone like me, I can't take you away from you. If you see what I mean, I can't be you. I can help you and I can manage those relationships, but I still need you to do stuff. So you can't opt out of being you and of being in your business or being part of your business if marketing is your responsibility. So those are the 5 things. So I hope that's helpful. Can I have a quick yeah, that's fine. Everybody's sort of with me in the chat. So I know you're all hearing, I'm making sense. Give me a thumbs up, Andrea. Is that okay?
It's fantastic. I've got a couple of hands up. I don't know whether people want to speak. Do you want
Should
to take a couple of questions?
That's fine.
Yeah?
I can take a few now and then I'll go on to 5 things journalists love.
Okay. Oh, we just had hands put down, so it might just be that they were just saying, oh, all great, thanks. So that's fine. Everybody's still with us. Everybody's still following. So if you want to carry on, and then we can take questions at the end. But if everybody can start thinking about, you know, their particular questions, things that relate to their own businesses, and save those up for Fiona, then we can cover those off because we're going to have plenty of time at the end.
Have a little think about what might be a good story for your business in 2021. Nothing is stupid to ask me, okay? Because I'll just be honest. So nothing is stupid to ask me. Just ask it. Don't leave this thinking I should have asked that. Okay, things that journalists love. Right story, right time. So there's 2 things here. This is particularly true of the local media, okay? The local media are looking for news around local people. So how I interpret that in Swindon and Wiltshire is you will find I send out client stories that mention the word Swindon or Wiltshire. Okay, it's really simple stuff. If you're in Oxford, it's Oxford or Banbury or Newbury or whatever it might be. I know Newbury's in Berkshire, but you know, think about where you're physically based, and that may be enough to get you in the media, okay? Where you are based, okay? And many business owners, you can't believe, even now I'll get news releases from business owners that they've self-written or that they've even employed PR companies to do it and they don't say where they're based. Okay, really basic stuff. So if you don't know where to start, start there. Start in your own community where you're physically based. If you have a bigger business and you have multiple sites, you can have a local media list for every single site where you have people. Okay, so that's where you're going to start. Right story, right place. What I also mean is topical news. Topical news, and this requires being proactive and thinking about what's coming up. So today I think you'll find the Chancellor is giving a spending review. If you're say in the financial sector or you have a particular view in the small business sector, by 5 o'clock today I challenge you to have written your view of the spending review, give a little comment, who you are, name of your business, where you're based, phone number at the bottom, fire it off to your local BBC radio and say, I've got a view on the spending review today. And then look for opportunities like that across a year. Okay, the budget. We know the budget comes up every year. So what opportunities are there for your type of business? What if you are a florist and really busy times of the year for you are Valentine's Day and Christmas? Okay, these are two things that happen every single year, folks. Don't have to overthink it. And get a story out to the media 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. You know, your 5 best-selling flowers for Valentine's Day. They are not going to do a story that says, buy my stuff for Valentine's Day because I got loads of nice flowers. You've got to think around it. What's interesting? Or what's the meaning of flowers on Valentine's Day? Red roses, something like that. Okay, think around it. Send the idea to the media. It doesn't always require a news release, folks. Sometimes you can, when you've built a relationship with these people, just send them an email. And so if you're looking at anything for Valentine's Day is really busy in my business. Do you fancy talking to me about the meaning of flowers on Valentine's Day? Or, you know, give them a couple of ideas. You'll be surprised how much that bears fruit. There are other events in the year where you can hook stories onto. Simple ones like Easter, if that's important in your business, okay? But equally, if this is opening your mind to possibilities, you might want to get one of these, because I use it all the time with clients, and most of my clients have them because I make them. Okay, I'm going to show you, folks. If you haven't got one and you like a paper diary, this is a social media diary. Okay, this is my one for next year, and in it it's got every single awareness day you can imagine, so that you can plan, and I can plan for my clients, important times of the year that work for their business. So I work with a brand that is a free from brand around being free from certain allergens. So Allergy Awareness Week, Allergy Awareness Month. These are really important times for their business, and we plan stories around it. You can do exactly the same. You can do it yourself. Okay, so right story, right time. Don't be afraid to email your local press or your media list and say, hey guys, if you're doing anything on this subject coming up, I've got a view on it, I can share some information, or would you like to talk to me as someone who's affected by this? Does that make sense for everybody? This requires you to be proactive, but it can bear fruit. And sometimes you might want to refer back to a blog post you wrote the year before that shows what your expertise is around that. And you can send that as an example of the kind of things you can talk about. Okay, so right story, right time. This is about having a new sense and an awareness of what's going around that's topical. And a couple of things that are going to come up that I'll help you with. Brexit is going to come up big time. So this is not so much about your opinion. You can share it if you want to, that's up to you. Opinions, just remember, they invite the good and the bad. So if you're going to express an opinion, you need to understand that. But also it could just be about lived experience and impact. So if you import or export, or if your supply chain does, and you're worried about Brexit and a lack of a trade agreement out there, now is the time you can talk about that based upon lived experience and lived worries without expressing what your opinion is. However, a journalist will probably ask you, so you need to have a form of words around that. I'm already doing that with one client in particular. Okay, so right story, right time's the first thing. Audience, right audience. I've already alluded to this. Okay, where do you fit? And you fit in your community, so always start there. But you know, if it's HR Today you want to be in, and you want to talk about 10 top reasons for being for being a great HR manager, you've got to think as what works for the audience of the publication I'm trying to reach. What ideas can I pitch to them, which allows me to say who I am and what I do, and share my expertise and knowledge that's of value to their audience. Okay, which is stuff we hear all the time on social media, but for some reason we don't think of journalists who are writing for these audiences in the same way. I'll give you an example of how I do this. Okay, I'm about to start working with a not-for-profit organisation which deals in fostering and adoption. I have already been out, I haven't started working with them yet, but I've already been out to the national media and said to them, I'm going to start working with this organisation. Here are 3 things you need to know about it. Please let me know who's interested and wants to receive my stories about it. And so I've got a list of 3 national journalists like that, because I've approached it in the way that journalists get it. Okay, and they'll now be added to my national media list, and all that's required was 1 social media post in the right place. And these are things you have to learn. I mean, I've had 30 odd years to learn this, I get that. But you can take crumbs of what I'm telling you and apply it to your own business if you're DIYing. And it's fine to DIY, folks, it's fine. Okay, deadlines. Big thing with journalists. If you can meet their deadlines, they'll remember you above anything else. And let me explain how this can work. If a journalist comes to you and says, oh, Andrea, I know that you can help me with this, but I really need an answer by 2 o'clock. And you know that you definitely can't get an answer by 2 o'clock because you've got a client meeting, which you have to do. And at the end of the day, that has to take priority. So what you say to the journalist is this: do you know, today I really can't meet that deadline, but I appreciate it. However, my mate Paul, he can do that. How about I get onto Paul and see if he can make your deadline? Will that help you? And that journalist is going to say, yeah, really. And so you point them to someone else who can meet the deadline, because the journalist will remember you, not the person you've pointed them to, folks, because you're being a really helpful person. So if you can gradually build a profile to a journalist who realizes you're the source of other stories, of other voices, and you can get to them quickly, they're going to remember you, even if at that moment you can't meet the deadline, or what they're asking for you can't help with, but you know someone who can, and they will keep coming back to you. Okay, so that's deadlines. Right, we're now going to talk pictures and video, and you will have heard this if you've done anything on social media. Okay, we are about 55% as a society visual, and I suspect over time that psychological model about being visual will change, and more of us will be visual because we're so engaged in the digital world now. So if you send a story to the media with a picture as a separate entity, as a JPEG, and the picture makes sense with the story, you are doubling your chances of that story being used like that. And that means generally, and when you think to yourself, ooh, what picture shall I use? It's a headshot, folks. Start with a headshot. And that is not a selfie. It is not a rubbish picture you've taken with your phone, though actually you might get away with that during lockdown more than you ever would. This is a professional shot that is taken. So before you spend any money on even someone like me, spend photographs on that. And if you think to yourself, oh, yeah, because I heard this all the time, and I particularly hear it from experts who want to charge people 150 quid plus VAT per hour for their expertise, but won't spend 150 quid on a good photo shot, a good headshot session. What are you saying about your product or service that you are all going to cut corners on this basic stuff? I have my headshots done as a minimum once a year. Okay, and I do it because my hair gets longer, I might dye it, it might change colour, I'm a bit fatter, I'm a bit thinner, I got a few more chins, you know, many of us can, you know, we can relate to that. But the truth is, what you're saying is, I'm professional, and journalists want pictures to fill their paper. And in an age where in most newspapers, probably the one exception is the Nationals, and even they want pictures more than ever, there's now one staff photographer where there might have been a team of 5 in the past. And that's one of the reasons why. So good photographs that make sense with the story. Now, another thing here, they're not interested in your logos. Don't send logos. Have it ready in case they ask for it. And when you send a story, never, ever send it as a PDF. The amount of companies that do this, and PR companies even do it, and they send it to you as a PDF draft, and it looks all pretty because it's got all your logo on and it looks all designed and it makes you feel great. It is a total pain for a journalist to unpick that and fit it into their software, which will generally be something like InDesign. And frankly, most of them will delete it. They won't even look at it because they know that doubles the amount of work they'll have to do. So there are very specific circumstances where you would send a PDF, which is not a conversation for today, but in general terms, no, it's a Word document and a JPEG. Okay, with a photo that makes sense, which at minimum is probably a headshot or a team shot. And do not quote someone in your news release about your story and then have a picture of a different person. That makes no sense. That also is quite common. Okay, so these things that I'm saying to you may think, well, of course I wouldn't do that, but it happens regularly. Now, video. If you have a video clip or a video that speaks to or supports the story that you're doing, that will lift you even higher up a notch these days, particularly for digital online media publications. They love all that because it creates great traction for them. So mention it. Okay? So if you look up on the internet, if you look up Europe's first 3D printed electric car, a story is going to come up on Google. That's my story that went out with my client. It went in loads of different places, and we also had video. And I can tell you the video can make the difference. And I think that will become even more common. And it's particularly important for broadcast media for 2 reasons. They need to see how you perform. They need to hear your voice. Okay, and the only way to get better at these things is to practice them. I spent 13 years making other people look good on the telly. I was a series producer, so I was behind the scenes. It was really weird for me to come out and start talking like I'm talking to you today. Really weird. But you have to get used to it. And I do share a lot of information in a short period of time, but I hope that's useful. Pictures and video will elevate your story in the minds of a journalist. If your picture is huge, like over 8 meg or something, just say, I've got a really good high resolution picture. It's around 8 meg. I can retransfer it to you. Don't try and send it so it gets bounced back by their system, okay? So generally with JPEGs, 1 to 3 meg max. Always color, always landscape, never black and white. This is not arty-farty stuff, okay, where you're looking vaguely into the distance. This is an engagement to the media where you need to be looking at that reader or that listener or that viewer, okay? That's what you need to be thinking, okay? And the final thing I'm going to say to you today, because I'm conscious of time, is if nothing else, if you take nothing else away from today, the best stories, folks, come from people. They don't come from your business or your products or services, okay? They come from the people in your business. I cannot tell you how many times I've done a real world event and I've said, right, hands up, how many business owners in the room don't have people in their business? And people put their hands up because they forget themselves, because they might have a digital business. The best stories come from us, okay? They came from us and our teams. And once you start thinking like that, you're starting to think like a journalist, and the stories will start to go bing, 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 and you can start to plan them. Okay. Folks, I think I've whittled on enough. I need a drink. So, Andrea, over to you. Let's field some questions.
That is a masterclass in what, 45 minutes or just shy of. That's amazing, Fiona. Thank you so much. It's really getting inside the head of journalists and understanding what they need in order to be on their radar, if you like, and understanding what they like and what they don't like. So that is just phenomenal. We've got a couple of questions. So Susan's asking, where do we get one of these social media diaries from?
Oh yes, that's easy. You look online, you look for a lady who's like me called Janet Murray. She's a former journalist who wrote for The Guardian, but now she does full marketing. Look for her shop and scroll down for her diary. And it's £39 plus postage, and it is worth every penny if you are serious about this stuff.
It allows you to plan for the whole year, effectively.
It helps you plan for the whole year. I've got, folks, just to let you know, I've got a PR tribe on Facebook called Fiona Scott's PR Tribe. You're very welcome to join. I share lots of free stuff. So what I do with the diary is I always get an early bird price. So I put in my tribe, it's ready. You can go ahead and order. And I usually will have about 20 or 30 people who will place orders with Janet, and then you can get it for 30 quid. But sorry folks, you've missed the boat on that now. But it is really, I've used them for about 5 years. I even thought of doing my own, but it's no point reinventing the wheel. If someone's got it and it's good, use it. And there will be one of you where you couldn't use that for your business.
Yeah, that's amazing. We've got, Mike was asking, I think you've kind of covered this, but he asked before you've moved on to that section, how important are images to back up stories?
Yeah, really important, and will be increasingly so. So with the national press, when you see national press asking for things, and obviously I see that every day, they'll often use the term, they'll say, you need to have good collects, COLLECTS, good collects. And that means good images. It's just a jargon term for images. And the story must make sense. So I always say to my clients, if eventually we would like to get some national media, we need to make sure the pictures reflect that from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Okay, from the beginning. How do you want to present yourself? And also the pictures need to be authentic. They can't be airbrushed so that you look in your 20s when you're in your 50s like me. So, okay, if I was having my image done today, okay, my hair's a bit messy and it's a bit long and I've got a cold sore hair, right? So if I had the photographs done, they'd remove this, but they can't stop me looking like I'm 54 and overweight. That's who I am. And I have to embrace who I am today. And I say that to all of you, male and female, because I've heard it all, folks. I've heard people say, oh, I have the photographs done when I've lost 3 stone. Well, okay, can your business wait until you've lost 3 stone? Because how long that's going to be? We have to be authentic to who we are today. Your photographs are working for you if within 6 months to a year you're sick to death of them, you never want to look at them again, and you need new photographs. That is a sign that you're doing the right thing.
Perfect, thank you for that. I've got a question. So how might approaching journalists and media be different if you have a charity or a social enterprise?
It's not different. Okay, it's not different. The benefit you have is that many journalists will be more open to running your stories because there's not a profit motive there. Okay, and they might align with you more easily. However, the other thing with that sector is you can tend to push it too hard and then want everything for free from them. So you need to manage that.
Yeah.
Okay. So otherwise it's no different. Just make sure you say in any covering email that you are a charity or a social enterprise, and you might have what we call the boilerplate, a description of what you are and what you do at the bottom of the actual story. But what you cannot do, you have no right to, have your story in over any other business entity. Okay.
No, that makes sense.
And also in that area, if you are wanted to be in a specific publication like Charity Times or something, another organization, a publication that represents the charitable sector, they may still ask you for money to do it, because they don't survive anyway. So don't assume just because you are a charity or a social enterprise that you won't be asked to pay, because you may be.
Okay, perfect. Susan says you look great, by the way. So thank you for that, Susan. But she's also asking, what sort of social media does it have in it, this diary that you showed us?
Okay, it allows you to plan for any social media platform that you write on. Okay, it's got planet. I can't show it all to you, but it's got, if you're a real planner and you like to plan to the nth degree, I'm not like that. So what I do is I use the diary pages and I plan it in my own diary, and I have a VA who helps me. But if you're doing it all yourself and you're really need that planning and to see it written down, it has spaces for Instagram, LinkedIn and all things like this, and some generic note spaces for those of you who aren't settled on what your social media platforms are, or you might be really good on LinkedIn but you think, do you know, for 2021 I'm going to up my game on Facebook. And so I want to plan that. I'm already okay with LinkedIn because I'm doing that regularly, but I want to bring in something new. It might just give you that little bit of confidence, if you like, about planning that.
Perfect, that's lovely. Robert's asking, do we need to, and how do we add credibility to our story? Let's say it's an innovation or a breakthrough, if you like.
Okay, when you make bold claims about exciting new products or services or whatever it is, you have to be able to back that up, and you saying it so is not enough. So you add credibility by others who are credible saying it so. So you might have won an award, for example, which often also helps in sales, by the way. That's just another aside. You add credibility by someone who's a third party, and that, at the end of the day, that's what PR is. It's someone else sharing your stories and saying how good you are.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have some kind of peer-reviewed evidence or some kind of award that backs up what you're saying. I'll give you an example. Just saying that you are the UK's leading #1 business speaker because you've decided you are. You know, journalists know that's rubbish. They're not idiots. But, you know, with the one I told you about the car, we knew that. And also, prior to me putting that story out to the general media, we'd submitted it to an engineering magazine, which was very specific, to see if they would run it with their greater knowledge, and they did. And you're able to include that link for that very specific magazine, which backs up what you're saying. So various ways of doing this. Okay, so I hope that helps. The credibility has to really come from a third party who's credible, saying that you're credible.
Yeah,
that could be testimonials, folks. It could be testimonials.
Yeah, the power of testimonials. Got another question from Annie. So really, really helpful and insightful. Thanks. That's brilliant. I'm glad you got so much from it, Annie. But she's asking, regarding products and services experiences, is it okay to ask them to cover new ones, such as a new tour they might like to sample?
Okay, so if you're talking about the sort of travel and leisure sector, that's a very specific sector for the national press. And yes, you can ask them to do it if it's a new thing, and journalists will. It has to be booked well in advance, have to plan it. Also, you've got to remember it's a review, so reviews go both ways, and you cannot control that. And also with journalists, when they're doing sort of travel reviews, it's probably the one area where a travel specialist journalist or a blogger in that space will generally guarantee you coverage. They'll pitch the deal, see if they get the commission, say, for example, from the Sunday Times, and then they do the thing. But you have to pay for them and cover their expenses from the minute they step out their back door to the minute they get back to the back door, apart from spending money. Okay, you have to do that. Otherwise, it's not a true review and they won't do it. Okay, you might get more luck with local media, but you have to be honest and think to yourself, are they going to cover this? Because you can't force them to. So that's really a very specific conversation, Annie, that I'd have to have with you around that. So yeah, they might sample it, but open your mind as to what the media is. It's not just journalists, it could be bloggers and social media influencers. And that's a whole nother conversation about how you judge those people as being of value. And there's a whole set of criteria I use to do that.
Perfect. That brings me on to my next question, Fiona. So if any attendees on the call today want to have that dialogue with you, what provisions are there? We've talked kind of about, you know, you've got that Facebook group, which is great, I'm part of that, but what is there by means of a mechanism to get in touch with you and liaise with you from here?
I think the couple of ways. If you just want to find out a bit about Fiona and what she does and get a sense of what she does, then free. I'm on Facebook. It's called Fiona Scott's PR Tribe. You'll be asked to answer some questions where you can say you've been on this chat today and you can come on in. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm going to sell my stuff to you, but I share a lot of stuff for free, and there are other journalists sitting in my group. It's not that big, it's only about 300 odd people. Okay, if you, I do a power hour, which I'm doing till December the 22nd. I'm on holiday from the 23rd because it's my husband's birthday, so that's a must. I'm doing a power hour for £60 plus VAT, and that's 60 minutes virtually to look at you and your business and offer you some suggestions, cover whatever you want to cover, talk about a press release. Anything that I've talked to you today about how it applies to you and your business, I will cover with you. And usually I find that's the best way to start with somebody before we start quoting big and frightening numbers around PR, because people get really scared around PR, and there's no need to be. But you need to be educated about how you're going to use it in your business.
That's great.
My email for that is fiona@fionascott.co.uk.
And I'll certainly share. So I'll share with attendees today the recording of today, just with the attendees from today. And also we'll cut in that video that we weren't able to hear the sound for as well, so people can see that. But we'll get that to them after the first, when you've done the big launch, because it is really very entertaining. Any more questions, folks, before we let Fiona go? I suppose I had one, and we were talking about it briefly. I get a number of clients come through, OxLEP and other growth hubs that we support, whereby they talk about the frequency of stories. We kind of touched on this when we were talking before. It's not enough just to do that one release, is it? It has to be a continuous program, if you like.
Yeah, this is quite common. And what I generally say as a rule of thumb, you're looking to have a media splurge, a media spike in interest between every 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, every 4 to 6 weeks, and you will find all of my clients do that one way or another. And if you're in doubt, put yourself in the shoes of your local newspaper editor and think, and if you put yourself in the shoes of that person, male or female, and you think, do I want to write a story every week about the same people? No, you don't. So that should educate you. So unless something amazing comes up, the completely unexpected, where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and you think that's a great story, I'd stick to 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Sending something out to your media list.
That's perfect. Okay, any more questions, anyone, before we let Fiona go? I have learned so much. I really, really have. It's been, like I say, it's a school day for me too.
Okay.
But yes, I'll forward Fiona's details. Please do get in touch with her. Like I say, she's very well respected in the circles that I move in. So she's a good contact for you. But I'll make sure you've got her contact details. But honestly, Fiona, thanks so much.
No, thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it and got some value from it.
Absolutely.
Look forward
And we might have you back in the new year, Fiona. You never know. But how you managed to talk for that length of time without any kind of notes or anything is incredible. So
I'm just old. I've been around for ages.
Oh, bless you.
Okay.
Listen, thanks ever so much, Susan. We've got thanks coming in there now, so really appreciate it, and we'll speak soon.
Okay, thank
you.
Right. Bye,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye.
Bye.